All right, Jamison. So we have some cool articles that we're talking about today. And this first one from Greystone, the title is NMHC, Long Range Optimism for the Multifamily Sector. Now, we have Caitlin Walter, who's the Senior Vice President of the Multifamily Housing Council. I'm just going to read this quote straight from here. She says, not only are completions leveling off, but multifamily permits were also down during the first quarter of 2025, which means there should be a further slowdown in supply in 2026 and 27. Can you break this down a little bit?
Yeah, we've been experiencing a lot of supply in multifamily over the last 3 or 4 years. Most of this was started when interest rates were very low. Developers saw opportunities to get capital at low costs and planned a lot of units, which is a good thing for renters, for the robustness and the affordability of the supply of apartment units. On the ownership side, you don't want to see oversupply when you own apartment buildings because that can affect rents and it can affect occupancy. And we are starting to see data now in this new report from highlighted by Greystone, but it's the NMHC economists pointing out is that we saw a slowdown in permits in the first quarter, even more than we expected. And as we look out over the next few years, there's going to be a pretty dramatic slowdown in the supply of new apartments. This is important because it's been 2.5 years of pretty tough times for multifamily. Not only did we see higher interest rates and higher debt costs, but we also saw rents flat and occupancy soft. We're at the point now where our buildings are full. We're full occupancy in Phoenix is about 95%. And so we're at that threshold in our buildings, but we have to hustle. We have to give concessions. You know, a lot of the new apartments that come up, they give very aggressive concessions to get them leased up, meaning they'll give a month or 2 months of free rent to get somebody to move in there.
Wow.
And so if you're renting, and even if you're happy in your apartment or your home, and you see this opportunity to move in with 2 months free rent, it's pretty appealing. Like I said, it's good for the renter market, but it has been tough for the rest of the apartments in our market with all this additional supply. It's just on the fringes. It's put additional pressure. So we've had to work harder. We've had to give concessions in order to keep your property full. I have seen some operators who have really struggled with their operations. You know, they may not have really good property management. They may outsource their property management and they're not doing a good job, and they fired 2 or 3 property managers to try to get a better outcome. So this is, welcome news for apartment owners to start seeing the new pipeline of supply to come down.
This article really talks about the high land cost, the high interest rates, insurance going up, property taxes going up. So you touched on this a little bit, but how much of a slowdown do you think you're going to see in construction?
Yeah, if you're a developer now, you're looking at not only are your interest costs much higher than they were 3 or 4 years ago. 3 or 4 years ago, you get a construction loan for 4%, 3.5%, 4%. And now you're probably double that. To build the property, and that has an exponential cost effect when you actually flow that through on your financial model as to what the costs do. You're going to have to probably pay some interest. You're going to have interest reserves during the construction period, and then through lease up, and then you have an exit plan that, okay, if we build this, now we're going to sell the building. Now the exit plan is also difficult because the newer buyer who's going to come in and acquire the building is going to have a higher interest rate. So that's really impacted things. Now, in addition to that, and that's the biggest one, building costs have gone up, labor costs have gone up, insurance costs have gone up, taxes in most places have gone up. So it's a totally different environment when you're looking at building, when you're doing the due diligence and the underwriting today than it was 3-4 years ago, when interest rates were so low and the costs were more stable. That was why we saw this big glut of supply. But these are going to be pretty significant restrictions and a throttle on the new supply for a while. It might be there might be a period here of several years where there isn't enough supply to meet the demand, and that's what as you look at the data, that's what we're seeing over the next few years.
It really is that kind of course correct where the pendulum swung so far one way and now it seems like it's going to swing back a little bit.
Yeah, can we just get in the middle somehow?
I know.
The pendulum, for whatever, in industries like ours that are cyclical, you're exactly right. The pendulum swings one way or the other. It tends to be that. Now, as an investor, that's really the opportunity, because if you can be long-term minded, if you are not reactionary, if you can look at the real fundamentals of what drives an asset's performance. In our case, the fundamentals are the fact that owning homes is more expensive than ever. More young people are deciding to rent longer. They're happy to pay their rent. They pay their rent on time, and our pool of renters continues to grow. Over the next 10, 15 years, those demographic changes and those mindset changes around renting versus owning are going to continue to drive our industry. So you have to, as an investor, look at those key fundamentals and let the pendulum do whatever it's going to do, because the outcome and the key fundamentals are what's really going to drive the asset performance. And that takes me back to right now. It's a fantastic time to buy multifamily. If you can buy multifamily, if you can invest in a group that's buying multifamily, because you're getting it at a good entry point, a good price point, the next few years are going to be good for multifamily.
And I want to get into that here in a second, but before we get kind of into why it's such a good time, there's something that this same article continues to talk about, which is things that are affecting why people are building or reasons that they might not be building upcoming. One of those things is NIMBY. So according to a recent survey that the Multifamily Housing Committee did, says 75% of members said that they do face NIMBY opposition. So you were saying earlier, that's 3 out of 4. That's a huge percentage. But what is NIMBY? I mean, break that down for those of us who don't even know.
Yeah, you may have heard it before. NIMBYism is not in my backyard.
Okay.
So it's the mindset that, we want people to have affordable housing. We don't want to see people out on the street. We want people to have opportunities. We want low income folks to have a leg up, but not in our area.
Yep.
So put the housing shelter somewhere else, and we're happy to support it, but don't put it around us.
Yep.
Don't put that lower income apartment building
anywhere that I have to see it, really.
Yeah.
Like it says, not in my backyard.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of pushback, the past 10 years or so around apartment complexes in general. People don't like the density. They don't like to think, in that area we're going to have 300 apartment units, and now the traffic's going to be pressured. That's what NIMBYism is. And so we talk about it because if you look at California, they're a perfect example. They have not allowed there to be development of lower cost multifamily housing or lower cost housing. And you see what's happened there. People can't afford it. They end up having to move somewhere else. There is no aspirational home ownership from young people. Even if you make really good money, it's very difficult to buy a home in desirable places in California because they haven't supported development. Now, maybe that's going to start to change, and we definitely hope that it does. But that's another restriction. When we kind of step back as investors, and we look at the restraints and what's going to happen with fundamentals, people don't love multifamily going up more and more and more, and that will also reduce supply.
That also leads into policies like rent control, zoning effects. 88% of builders say that they aren't building in rent-controlled areas. It's a very similar thing. I mean, this is just taking more time, more money, and I'm sure you would say that it's then just slowing down construction, slowing down building, and it's why things are going to change upcoming. This
isn't my quote, but I've heard it, is that if you want to destroy a city, you can, 1, just blow it up, or 2, add rent control.
Wow.
Those are your options. because if you add rent control in a city, and you can look at New York, you can look at cities across Europe, developers do not go into those cities. They'll find greener pastures elsewhere. Rent control means that the price is going to be controlled by the government, and that you as a business owner, a developer, can't use market forces to help you with your pricing. And in the United States, if you look at the development, if you look at the where developers are going, they're going in places that are business friendly. That's also where populations are moving too. So places like Oregon, places like California, New York, those are very difficult places to develop already. And then you add rent control and people just go away. So 9 out of 10 of developers saying they're not going to build in those places leaves very few people who are going to go there, make a significant financial risk to go build housing. Not the right way to go from a policy standpoint.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I guess I've never really thought of it like that, but that makes total sense. That why would you want to bring any business there, including housing? That makes total sense.
And we saw the mayor candidate in New York City. Has come out, and he wants to freeze rent across the board. He wants to build 1 million new affordable housing units that are controlled by the government. Very socialistic kind of policies.
Yep, it's wild.
And he ended up winning in the primary, and we'll see what happens in New York. But we talk about the pendulum swinging back and forth. There's a lot of developers in New York who are starting to say, well, if this person comes in, we're just going to stop, our projects. We're going to the stuff that we have planned. We're going to pull out, and we'll wait. Business
owners are already saying in New York City, tons of business owners are saying we're leaving if this happens. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Rent control. If we go that direction, then you're going to have more government housing, especially at the low end for affordable housing and for workforce housing. You'll still get the very luxury apartments because those people can pay up.
Right.
It's a classic, policy that you think is going to help people, and in the long run, it really doesn't. It'll
just polarize it even further. Anyways, well, good luck to them. We'll see what happens. Let's move on to this next article from GlobeSt. This is titled, "Multifamily's Rising Loan Maturities Create New Buying Opportunities." So there was something in here that I really want to get into, which is the debt service coverage ratio. So Thomas Taylor, the senior manager of research at TREP, noted his analysis that a staggering $120 billion in multifamily loans is set to mature in the next 18 months. These loans, all maturing before 2027, have in place debt service coverage ratios below 120. What does that mean? What is this debt service coverage ratio?
From a high level is these loans that have been sitting there, lenders have extended it for a period of time. They're all coming due. So the bill is coming due for a lot of multifamily projects that were purchased at the high part of the market with debt that's now maturing. This is what we've been seeing the writing on the wall for a period of time. This is what's driving some of the distress in the multifamily market right now. If you're an operator of a multifamily project, you don't want to sell right now, you want to hold. But in many cases, if their loan's coming due, they have to sell. So there might be a forced sell situation or a foreclosure situation. And it's kind of the tale of two worlds, because we just talked about a minute ago how multifamily is investors are very optimistic about the next several years because all of the new supply is burning off and new plans for new supply are being canceled. So there's a lot of optimism over the next few years about multifamily. But today, if you look at the distress that we're seeing, it's really the tale of two stories here. And these loans are coming up. The debt service coverage ratio, which is a term that's used across businesses, basically implies that if you have a 1.0 debt service coverage ratio, your debt payments are the same as your operating profit. So you have enough operating profit to pay your debt payments if it's 1. Now, if it's below 1, let's say you're 0.8, you don't have enough income to pay your debt. You only have enough to pay 80% of your debt payment on a monthly basis.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
If you're 1.2, you have almost about 20% more operating income than your debt, but not much, and it's tight.
I was going to say that feels like even for an individual, that wouldn't be advisory. Like,
for an individual, it's tight, and certainly if you're around 1 or lower, you're not solvent. Most lenders are comfortable lending right now at a 1.25 or 1.3 debt coverage ratio.
Gotcha.
So they can see there's enough operating profit coming in to pay that mortgage payment, and there's a little bit left over.
Okay, well, good to know for all of us out there who are calculating our bills. Try to at least get over that 1.2. But let's talk about this distress, because you mentioned this several times, and this is really what kind of both of these articles are talking about, even though they're talking about them in kind of different ways. But so in this GlobeSt article, it says, speaking of distress, in the South Atlantic, there is $9.4 billion in multifamily debt that is about to mature. In the Pacific region, $4.6 billion about to mature. Middle Atlantic, which is going to be, New York, other places, $2.4 billion. West, South, Central, Texas, Oklahoma, there's $6.7 maturing. And then in the mountain region, which is where we are, Arizona, Colorado, $2.5 billion. I mean, can you talk to these different regions? I mean, especially the South Atlantic, which is the highest, $9.4 billion.
Yeah. The one thing is that it's not concentrated in just one region. This is across the board. But you do see some regions that stand out. The other thing that some regions have in their favor, and I'll point to ours in the mountain region, is that we have employment growth and we have wages growth. We have and we also have migration growth. In some of these areas in the Mid-Atlantic, the Northeast, they actually have net migration out. Wages are might be stable, but they're flat.
Yeah.
But this distress is pretty broad-based, and there's going to be opportunities across the board over the next period of time. We don't know if it's going to be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, but there's going to be opportunities to go buy these properties that are distressed across the board.
And so is that the positive, hopeful note that we can go out on, that even though we're in a season of distress, we've talked about the pendulum going back and forth. You actually told me like an idiom or like a metaphor the other day about the clock. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, you can't really time the market perfectly, but I had an old Wall Street veteran when I was there working as a young analyst explain to me that if you think about an old analog clock, and when the minute hand is on the 6, it's at the bottom of the clock, and when it's at the 12, it's at the top. People try to time things perfectly. It's impossible. But if you can buy assets when they're at their low point, even if it's 7 or 8, and then you can hold those assets and then sell them at the 10 or the 11, even though you're not perfect and buying it at the perfect time, you can do very, very well as an investor. You got to look at and have some of those early indications of where we're at in the cycle. In the investment industry, there's always cycles. So as you think through that and think where we're at in that cycle, we may not be perfectly at the bottom, but if you can start to see things are starting to move positively, and that's where I point to that first article where we're starting to see that supply burn up and the forecasts of new construction really fall off a cliff, those are positive indications. That kind of says, look, we're moving in the right direction. And I think that's where we're at. And I love that analogy, because it means you don't have to be perfect, but you do have to sit back, look objectively at the data, and make your decision from there.
And Neighborhood Ventures has been smart about this the whole time, and you guys are taking your opportunities now when, even though other people are selling, other people are scared, now, in your opinion, is the time, and you guys are taking it.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the Warren Buffett philosophy. When others are fearful, I'm greedy, and when others are greedy, I'm fearful. And in investing, you can't learn from anyone more about investing than Warren Buffett. So we're trying to take that advice and follow that.